chosen one, the papers have been marked, the exam graded, and yet something lingers in the corners of the room. A question that wasn't on any list, a moment that only now is revealing itself. And this is the part your identity was forged for. Hello and welcome, my dear friend. You didn't click this video by curiosity, boredom, or luck. Something in your spirit requested this moment before your mind could catch up. That's how divine timing works. It bypasses logic and lands right where it needs to, like a letter finally reaching its owner after traveling through every wrong hand first. Let's speak plainly. You've been through it. Not just surface-level struggles, but the kind of exam life gives only in whispers. The kind of test you can't study for because it doesn't come with questions. It is the question. And for a long time, it felt like the answer was always just out of reach. You weren't given a manual, no lifeline, just pressure, silence, and a strange feeling that you were being watched by something that wanted to see what you do when nothing made sense. You didn't just survive, you passed. And here's what no one tells you. You passed without shortcuts, without applause, and without becoming someone you're not. This wasn't some flashy trial where you knew what was at stake. This was private, lonely, and unrelenting. You kept showing up for life even when it stopped showing up for you. And that's where most fall off. Not because they're weak, but because the silence feels like abandonment. But you kept going. Let me ask you something personal. How many mornings did you wake up and feel like your name had been erased from every miracle list in heaven? How many days did you move through your routine with the weight of unanswered prayers pressing on your back like a jacket that never fit right? And still, you smiled. Not because everything was fine, but because quitting didn't fit either. You've walked through rooms where no one knew you were breaking inside. You answered texts you didn't have the energy to read. You kept your dignity when life was clawing at your sanity. That's not just strength. That's sacred endurance. You know what made it harder? No one saw the test. This wasn't the kind of suffering people praise or gather around to fix. This was invisible, hidden. It showed up in the form of delays that made no sense, losses that went unacknowledged, and inner battles that left no bruise, but bruised everything inside you. That's the thing about spiritual exams. They're silent. And yet, the whole sky is watching. You asked God, "Why is this happening to me?" And the heavens said nothing. But what you didn't hear was not rejection, it was observation. Some exams happen this way. Teacher doesn't talk during the exam, and neither does God. He wasn't gone, he was grading. He was measuring who you are when no one is clapping, when no one is watching, when no promise is on the horizon, and the only thing you can hold on to is the whisper that maybe, just maybe, this isn't the end of your story. That's what makes you chosen. Not that you escaped pain, but that you let it strip you clean without hardening your heart. That you let life corner you without becoming cruel. That you stayed kind when it felt like kindness was getting you nowhere. And don't overlook this. You didn't cheat. You didn't manipulate. You didn't betray your own soul to win a battle that wasn't even yours to fight. You didn't rush the process, even when the waiting felt like punishment. That's how you passed. Not with perfection, but with presence. You showed up even when you didn't recognize your own reflection. You stayed planted even when nothing around you was blooming. The people around you didn't see the fire, but you walked through it anyway. And now you carry something that can't be explained. A quiet authority. A spiritual gravity. The kind of presence that makes people pause, not knowing why they feel small when you walk in. It's not pride, it's power. Because you were given the hardest exam, and you passed in silence. And now something is shifting. The ground beneath you may still feel quiet, but listen closely. The silence is different now. It's not the kind of silence that tests your faith. It's the kind that precedes revelation. You've crossed a threshold. Not everyone sees it. Not everyone needs to. But heaven saw your paper, and it was marked with favor. You see, most people look for evidence of progress in obvious places, in paychecks, promotions, praise. But the most powerful promotions happen in rooms you never enter, in conversations your name was whispered into, in hearts that felt your strength even when they couldn't explain why. You didn't climb a ladder, you became one. Because when you pass a divine exam, you don't just get a reward, you become the proof. You become the evidence of what obedience in the dark can create. You're what faith looks like when it refuses to fold. And now, that quiet faith is starting to speak. You don't need to say much. People are already sensing the shift. They don't know what it is, but something about you feels different, more grounded, more clear, like someone who knows. But let's be honest, you didn't always feel this way. There were days you questioned if you were delusional, if maybe you misread all the signs, if maybe the calling was a fantasy you made up to survive the chaos. There were nights you stared at your ceiling in a room that felt too small for your potential and too heavy with pressure to breathe in. But you kept breathing. And now that breath, the one you almost lost in exhaustion, is the very air that's making room for your next chapter. There's a new strength forming in you, a weightless kind of strength. Not the kind that comes from clenching your fists and bracing for pain, but the kind that comes when you finally stop begging for the storm to pass and start learning how to dance in the rain. You're no longer asking, why me? Because deep down, you've started to understand you were trusted. God doesn't hand out soft paths to strong souls. He gives weight to those who can hold it. And while it may have felt cruel, it was actually divine trust wrapped in discomfort. The test was never about what you could gain. It was about what you could carry without breaking your spirit. Now, something sacred is unfolding. You don't need to chase it. It's not running from you. In fact, it's moving toward you now, slowly, confidently, unmistakably, like a sunrise that doesn't need an announcement to make the world brighter. You passed, and now you've been promoted in silence. And with that promotion comes a new responsibility. This is where the chosen become leaders, not by title, not by platform, but by presence. You carry a vibration now that speaks before you say a word. You walk into places and shift things simply by standing in your truth. That's not ego, that's earned. But here's the most beautiful part. You're not just called to rise, you're called to reach back. Because now you understand what it feels like to be on the edge, to be holding on by a thread, to be doing everything right, and still wondering if you've been forgotten. And that understanding is a gift. It gives you eyes that see beyond the surface. It gives you words that heal without trying. It gives you compassion that feels like oxygen to someone else drowning. You don't need a stage to teach. You don't need a crowd to lead. Your life is already speaking. Every scar, every silence, every yes whispered in the dark has become a light someone else can follow. You are no longer the one being tested. You are now the one trusted to guide. So don't downplay what you've survived. Don't shrink what you carry just because others didn't see the fire. The fire wasn't meant for them. It was meant to reveal you. You've earned this moment, not through noise, but through nobility. And now, it begins. Everything that once confused you is about to clarify. Everything that once felt delayed is about to arrive, not as a reward, but as a reflection of who you are, of what you've proven, and of what you're here to do next. Because you, chosen one, were given the hardest exam, and not only did you pass, You passed without cheating. Thank you so much for taking this journey with me. If this message resonated, please like, share it with someone who might benefit, and subscribe to stay connected. Continue your awakening journey by choosing one of the videos on your screen that resonates with you the most. See you there.